My name is Rachel Bennett, and I'm 39 years old. For 8 years, I worked at a company called Arclight Systems, a regional logistics and manufacturing firm headquartered outside Columbus, Ohio. When I joined, I was a process analyst with a narrow office, a second-hand laptop, and a manager who told me during my first week that people like me usually burned out before they made it to year 3. By people like me, he meant people who asked too many questions. I asked why our warehouses were still using handwritten discrepancy sheets when every delayed order cost us money. I asked why one plant was paying 3 different vendors for the same maintenance service. I asked why our largest customers were being promised delivery dates no one in operations had approved. And I asked why the executive team kept calling those problems growing pains when our profit margin had been shrinking for 5 straight quarters. My manager at the time was Hale. He was 58, silver-haired, polished, and very good at sounding calm while making everyone else feel unreasonable. Gordon had been at Arclight for nearly 20 years. He had the kind of reputation that becomes its own form of protection. The board trusted him because he had been there during the company's expansion. The CEO trusted him because Gordon never brought problems into a meeting unless he already had someone else to blame. For a long time, Gordon liked me. He liked that I could fix systems without asking for much credit. He liked that I could walk into a warehouse where supervisors had stopped speaking to one another and leave with a plan everyone understood. He liked that when a client called at midnight because a shipment had vanished between 2 distribution centers, I answered. Most of all, he liked that my work made his department look successful. During my second year, I redesigned our inventory reconciliation process and reduced write-offs by almost 30%. During my 4th year, I led the recovery of a failed software rollout that had already cost the company nearly $2 million. During my 6th year, I negotiated a scheduling agreement with our largest transportation partner that cut late deliveries by half. Each time, Gordon congratulated me privately. Then, he presented the results publicly. At first, I told myself that was how corporate life worked. I was being noticed. I was being promoted. My salary increased. My title changed from analyst to operations manager, then to senior director. Gordon told me more than once that he was preparing me for the next chair. That chair belonged to the vice president of operations. When our vice president announced his retirement, Gordon called me into his office before the news had even gone company-wide. He closed the glass door, leaned back in his chair and smiled. "This is the opening we've been working toward," he said. I remember every detail of that moment. The rain against the windows, the smell of the coffee he never finished, the framed photograph of him shaking hands with the governor at a manufacturing summit. I remember thinking that 8 years of missed holidays, emergency flights, and 60-hour weeks were finally about to mean something. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Put together your 90-day transition plan," he said. "Focus on profitability, client retention, and succession. The board will want to see that you're thinking beyond your current role." I spent the next 3 weeks building the strongest proposal of my career. I reviewed every major operating contract. I met with plant managers, finance, procurement, and customer service. I built a plan for consolidating 2 underperforming vendor networks, automating our overtime approvals, and restructuring leadership at our least efficient facility. I included projected savings, implementation risks, and backup plans. The proposal was 48 pages long. Gordon asked me to send him the editable file. I did. 2 days later, he called me back into his office. This time, he did not smile. "The board wants a different direction," he said. I felt something inside me go still. What direction? "They want fresh energy, someone who can modernize the culture." I had spent 8 years modernizing the culture. Who did they choose? Gordon folded his hands on the desk. "My daughter." For a few seconds, I thought I had misheard him. His daughter, Madison Hale, was 28 years old. She had joined Arclight 11 months earlier as a corporate strategy manager. Before that, she had worked at a marketing agency and then at a venture-backed meal delivery startup that collapsed after 18 months. Madison was intelligent, confident, and very good at making obvious observations sound like revelations. She had never managed a warehouse. She had never negotiated a transportation contract. She had never been responsible for a production deadline, a safety incident, or a client escalation. And now she was going to be vice president of operations. I looked at Gordon. "You told me the role was mine to earn." "I told you there was an opportunity." "You asked me to build the transition plan." "And you did excellent work." The way he said it made my skin crawl. "Did Madison submit a plan?" Gordon's eyes hardened slightly. "This isn't personal, Rachel." It was the most personal thing anyone had ever done to me at work. I stood up. "Is the board aware that she's your daughter?" He gave me a patient smile. "Of course. Legal reviewed everything." That answer was technically true and completely misleading. Later, I learned that the board had been told Madison was the strongest candidate in a formal internal process. They had been shown a transition proposal. They had been told she had developed it with cross-functional support. What they had not been told was that the proposal was mine. The announcement went out the next morning. Madison Hale, Vice President of Operations. Her photograph appeared on the company intranet above a statement about bold leadership, operational excellence, and a new era of accountability. The first paragraph of her message used 3 sentences lifted almost word for word from my transition plan. By noon, people from 4 departments had stopped by my office. Some were angry for me, some were embarrassed. Most spoke in careful voices because everyone knew Gordon had ears everywhere. My closest colleague, a finance director named Daniel Cho, shut my door and said, "Tell me you saved every version." I did. Good. I looked at him. That sounded ominous. It was meant to. Daniel had been at Arclight almost as long as I had. He was precise, cautious, and not easily rattled. For the previous 6 months, he had been helping the audit committee review unusual vendor payments tied to operations. I knew there was an audit, I did not know how serious it was. He lowered his voice. "Do not quit today." I wasn't planning to. "You were gripping your resignation letter when I walked in." I looked down. He was right. I had already opened a blank document and typed the date. Daniel sat across from me. "There are things happening above Gordon that he doesn't know about." "What things?" "I can't tell you everything, but I can tell you this. The board's audit committee is concerned about conflicts in operations procurement." My anger sharpened into attention. "Which vendors?" "I can't say yet." "Then why are you telling me?" "Because they need operational context, and because Gordon just handed you a reason to stop protecting him." I stared at him. For years, I had corrected problems before they reached the executive level. If a vendor invoice was wrong, I fixed it. If a supervisor approved something outside policy, I documented it and moved on. If Gordon gave verbal instructions that contradicted procedure, I found a way to make the result legal and efficient. I thought I was protecting the company, but sometimes protecting a company from the consequences of one executive only protects the executive. "What does the committee need?" I asked. Daniel exhaled slowly. "An independent operational review. Contract performance, pricing exceptions, approval history, related party indicators. They need someone who understands what normal should look like." "And they want me?" "They ask for the most qualified person who does not report directly to Gordon." "I report directly to Gordon." "Not anymore." I did not understand. Then Daniel slid a folded paper across my desk. It was a temporary assignment letter signed by the chair of the audit committee. For the purpose of the review, I would report to the committee's outside counsel. My access would remain unchanged. My work would be confidential. The date on the letter was 3 days earlier, before Madison's promotion, before Gordon stole my plan, before he told me the board wanted someone else. Daniel watched me read it. "They were going to tell you next week," he said. "The timing changed." "Because of the promotion?" "Because Gordon may try to remove you." I laughed once, without humour. "He needs me to train his daughter." Then let him think that's all you're doing. That afternoon, Madison invited me to her new office. It had belonged to the retiring vice president. She had already replaced his family photographs with abstract art and moved the conference table so it faced the windows. My transition plan was open on her monitor. She hugged me. I did not hug her back. "I know this is awkward," she said. "Do you?" She stepped away. "My dad told me you were disappointed." "He told you correctly?" Madison nodded as if I had confirmed a scheduling issue. "I want you to know how much I respect you." "Then why is my plan on your screen?" Her face changed for half a second, then the confidence returned. "Dad said it was a department document." "My name was on the file." "He said you developed it as part of succession planning." "For my succession." She sat down behind the desk. "Rachel, I didn't make the decision." "No, you just accepted the title." Her jaw tightened. "I was told the board wanted me." That was the first moment I realised Madison might not know the full story. It did not make her innocent, but it made her useful. She pushed a folder towards me. "I need you to walk me through the 90-day plan. My first executive review is Monday." I looked at the folder, then at her. "What exactly do you understand about the vendor consolidation section?" She glanced down. "The general strategy." "Which vendors?" "The transportation and facilities vendors." "There are 14 transportation vendors and 22 facilities vendors." She hesitated. "I haven't memorized every name." "The plan recommends terminating 3 agreements. Which 3? Her expression hardened. "I asked you here to help me transition, and I'm trying to understand where to begin." For the next hour, I asked basic questions. She could not answer most of them. By the end, she was no longer pretending the plan was hers. She leaned back and said, "Dad told me you'd be difficult." I closed the folder. "Your father told me I'd be vice president." That was how our working relationship began. For the next 6 weeks, I trained Madison during the day and audited Gordon at night. I did not steal documents. I did not break into systems. I did not plant evidence or secretly record conversations. I used the access I already had and followed the instructions of outside counsel. The first irregularity involved a facilities maintenance company called Northline Industrial Services. Northline had received almost $4 million in contracts over 3 years. Their rates were higher than competitors. Their response times were worse. Their invoices often included vague emergency charges approved after the work had already been completed. The contracts had been signed under Gordon's authority. That alone was not proof of wrongdoing. Then I searched the ownership records supplied by outside counsel. Northline was registered to a holding company controlled by Gordon's brother-in-law. The relationship had never been disclosed. The second irregularity involved a consulting firm called Hale Strategic Partners. At first, I assumed the name was a coincidence. It was not. The firm had been formed by Madison 2 years before she joined Arclight. It had no public office, no full-time staff, and no website. Yet Arclight had paid it 9 monthly retainers for market transformation advisory before Madison was hired. The invoices had been approved by Gordon. When I asked finance for supporting deliverables, there were none. The third irregularity was even worse. Gordon had negotiated a performance bonus tied to department savings, but several of the savings credited to him came from projects I had designed and executed before the measurement period began. He had shifted implementation dates and reclassified expenses to make it appear that the savings occurred under his direct initiative. The bonus had increased the value of his executive stock package. Daniel and I built a timeline. Every profitable contract with a measurable operational improvement had my signature, my project code, or my approval history somewhere in the file. Every questionable related party payment led back to Gordon. The pattern was so clear that I felt embarrassed I had not seen it earlier. But that was the point of the way he operated. He never asked one person to do everything. He asked procurement to rush a vendor exception. He asked finance to change a cost center. He asked me to solve the resulting operational problem. Each person saw one small piece. Gordon saw the whole board, and he thought no one else ever would. Meanwhile, Madison was failing. Not dramatically, not in a way that would make a good story by itself. She failed in small executive ways that cost other people time. She scheduled meetings without reading the reports. She announced deadlines before asking whether they were possible. She used phrases like drive alignment and unlock capacity, while plant managers tried to explain that a machine had been down for 3 days. When challenged, she looked to me. At first, I answered. Then I stopped rescuing her. During her first executive review, the CEO asked why a major customer's backlog had increased by 11%. Madison said, "We're seeing some transitional friction." The CEO looked at her. "What does that mean?" She turned to me. I kept my hands folded. Madison cleared her throat. "It means the scheduling changes have created short-term constraints." "Which scheduling changes?" Again, she looked at me. This time, Gordon interrupted. "Rachel, perhaps you can clarify." I smiled politely. Madison approved the accelerated maintenance shutdown at the Dayton facility. That reduced available production hours during the same week we committed to the client recovery schedule. The room went quiet. Madison stared at me. Gordon said, "Was that your recommendation?" "No." "Then why was it approved?" "I raised the conflict in writing." The CEO looked at Madison. "Did you read the risk memo?" She said, "I was told the shutdown was time sensitive." "By whom?" Madison's eyes moved towards her father. Gordon's face did not change, but I knew him well enough to see the anger. After the meeting, he called me into his office. "You embarrassed her." I answered the CEO's question. "You could have provided context." "I did." "You made it sound like she ignored advice." "She did ignore advice." Gordon stood. For the first time in 8 years, he raised his voice at me. "You seem to have forgotten your role." I remained seated. "My role is Senior Director of Operations. Your role is to support leadership. Competent leadership is easier to support." His face went pale. "That attitude is exactly why the board chose Madison." I almost smiled. "The board chose Madison?" "Yes." "Then you have nothing to worry about." He stared at me for several seconds. "You should be careful, Rachel." "About what?" "About becoming replaceable." I left his office and wrote down every word. 2 days later, the audit committee expanded the review. Outside counsel wanted emails, approval chains, vendor bid histories, and the original files connected to the vice president selection process. Daniel warned me that once we delivered the full report, Gordon would likely know who had helped. I already knew what he would do. He would fire me before the board could ask questions. So I prepared for that too. I made sure every audit file was stored in the secure committee repository, not on my laptop. I documented my responsibilities. I sent routine status updates to Madison and Gordon so neither could claim I had abandoned my work. I did not discuss the audit with colleagues. And I updated my resume. Not because I planned to run, because I wanted to remember that Arclight was not my identity. The company had benefited from my work, but it did not own my future. The final audit report was 186 pages. My operational findings covered vendor pricing, related party relationships, contract performance, approval exceptions, bonus calculations, and internal control failures. Daniel's financial analysis quantified the losses. Outside counsel added legal conclusions and interview summaries. The estimated overpayment to Northline alone was $1.7 million. The payments to Hale strategic partners were $312,000. The improperly calculated executive bonus was just under $600,000. But the most important section was not about money. It was about governance. Gordon had used his authority to benefit relatives, conceal conflicts, manipulate performance results, and influence the appointment of his daughter to a role for which she had not been independently evaluated. The report included version histories from my transition plan. My original file had been created on my computer under my employee profile, with 43 tracked revisions. Madison's presentation had been created from a copy Gordon downloaded 2 days after I sent it to him. My name had been removed from the title page. Several first-person phrases had been changed from "I will" to "we will." The evidence was not dramatic. It was worse. It was ordinary. A sequence of clicks, approvals, and quiet assumptions that Gordon believed no one would ever connect. The audit committee scheduled a special board meeting for Thursday morning. On Tuesday afternoon, Gordon fired me. He did it in a conference room with Madison and a human resources representative named Claire. There was a folder on the table. Claire looked uncomfortable. Madison looked exhausted. Gordon looked almost cheerful. "Rachel," he began, "we've reached the conclusion that your conduct has become incompatible with the collaborative culture required of senior leadership." I glanced at Claire. "What conduct?" Gordon opened the folder. "Repeated insubordination. Failure to support the vice president. Undermining leadership in executive meetings. Withholding information." Each accusation was written in vague language with no dates. I asked, "Is this a termination meeting?" "Yes." "For cause?" Gordon paused. "We are offering a separation agreement." Claire slid the document toward me. It included 12 weeks of salary in exchange for a broad release, confidentiality obligations, and a statement that I had resigned voluntarily. I read the first page. Then I pushed it back. "I'm not signing this." Gordon leaned forward. "You should think carefully." "I have." "Without the agreement, the company will document your termination for misconduct." "Then document it." Madison looked at me. "Rachel, you don't have to make this harder." I turned to her. "Did you read the separation agreement?" She said nothing. "Did you read the performance allegations?" Again, nothing. I looked at Claire. "Please provide me with copies of every document placed in my personnel file today." Gordon's calm expression cracked. "You are no longer authorized to access company materials." "My personnel records are not company strategy," Claire said softly. "We can provide copies." Gordon glared at her. I stood. "Is there anything else?" He said, "You will return your laptop, badge, and phone before leaving." I removed my badge and placed it on the table. "My laptop is in my office." "We'll have security escort you." I nodded. As I reached the door, Gordon said, "Rachel." I turned. "You could have had a future here." I looked at him for a long moment. I did. Security walked me to my office. People watched through glass walls as I packed a plant, 2 framed photographs, and a coffee mug into a cardboard box. I did not take files. I did not send a final email. I did not make a speech. Daniel stood near the elevators. He did not approach me. He simply gave one small nod. The board meeting was 38 hours away. Thursday morning, I woke at 6, made coffee, and put on the navy suit I had bought for my vice president interview. At 8:15, a car sent by outside counsel picked me up. At 8:50, I entered Arclight through the main lobby as a protected audit witness. The receptionist looked confused. So did the security guard. My badge had been deactivated, but the board's attorney was waiting with a visitor pass. The special meeting was held in the executive boardroom on the 12th floor. Gordon sat near the centre of the table. Madison sat 2 seats away from him. The CEO, the General Counsel, the Audit Committee and the full board were present. Daniel was there with 2 binders. Outside counsel had arranged folders at every seat. When I entered, Gordon's face went blank. The chair of the board, a retired banker named Evelyn Price, gestured to an empty chair. "Miss Bennett, thank you for joining us." Gordon looked towards the General Counsel. "What is she doing here?" Evelyn answered. "She is here because the Audit Committee requested her testimony." Gordon's eyes moved to Daniel, then to the binders, then back to me. "This is inappropriate. She was terminated for misconduct." Evelyn opened the folder in front of her. "We will discuss that decision as well." Gordon sat back. For the first 20 minutes, outside counsel presented the audit scope and methodology. No one raised their voice. No one accused Gordon of theft. They simply walked through documents. Northline ownership records, pricing comparisons, emergency invoice approvals, the undisclosed family relationship. Gordon said the relationship was distant and the vendor had been selected for reliability. Then Daniel displayed the performance data, showing Northline ranked last among comparable vendors. Hale strategic partners came next. Madison's face changed when she saw the invoices. She turned to her father. "What is that?" Gordon said quietly. "Consulting work." "I didn't do consulting work for Arclight." The room became still. Outside counsel asked, "Did your company receive these payments?" Madison stared at the documents. "I closed that account before I joined Arclight." Daniel said, "The payments were deposited into the business account over a 9-month period." "I didn't know." Gordon interrupted. "She provided informal strategic advice." Madison looked at him. "When?" He did not answer. The attorney continued. The bonus calculations were presented, the shifted dates, the reclassified savings, the stock impact. Gordon argued that finance had approved every number. Daniel replied, "Finance approved the numbers based on operational certifications submitted by Mr. Hale." Then came the vice president selection. My original transition plan appeared on the screen beside Madison's presentation. The similarities were undeniable. Evelyn asked me to explain when I created the document and why. I did. She asked whether I had authorized Gordon or Madison to present it as Madison's work. I said no. Gordon leaned forward. "This is absurd. Rachel prepared that plan as part of her employment. Work product belongs to the company." Evelyn looked at him. "The question is not who owns the file. The question is whether you misrepresented the candidate who created it." He said, "The plan reflected departmental collaboration." Outside counsel displayed the version history. My name, my edits, my notes. Then Madison's copy, created from Gordon's download. Authorship removed. Gordon's expression changed. For the first time, he looked afraid. Evelyn turned to Madison. "Did you represent to the board that you developed this plan?" Madison's eyes filled with tears, but her voice remained steady. "My father told me the plan had been prepared for the department and that he had adapted it for my candidacy." "Did you believe you were the board's preferred candidate?" "Yes." "Did your father tell you Miss Bennett had also been considered?" "No." "Did you know Miss Bennett had been told to prepare the plan for her own transition?" "No." Madison looked at me. "I didn't know." I believed her. Again, that did not erase what she accepted, but it mattered. Gordon's attorney, who had joined by video, requested a break. Evelyn denied it. "We have one more issue," she said. The human resources representative, Claire, was invited into the room. She confirmed that Gordon had initiated my termination 2 days earlier. She confirmed that the allegations had not gone through the normal review process. She confirmed there were no prior written warnings in my file. Then she produced an email Gordon had sent her. The subject line was, "Remove Rachel before Thursday." The email said my continued presence created unacceptable exposure and instructed HR to complete the termination before the special board meeting. Gordon stood. "This is a privileged management communication." The General Counsel said, "Sit down." He did not. Evelyn's voice remained calm. "Mr. Hale, sit down." This time, he did. She folded her hands. "Before we consider your request to terminate Miss Bennett for misconduct, I would like you to answer one question." No one moved. Evelyn looked directly at Gordon. "Why does Miss Bennett's signature appear on every profitable operating initiative you claimed in your bonus package, while your daughter's appears on none of them?" Gordon opened his mouth. Nothing came out. It was not a dramatic confession. There was no shouting, no table pounding, no sudden apology. There was only silence. The kind of silence that arrives when a powerful person realizes everyone else finally sees the structure he built around himself. The board placed Gordon on immediate administrative leave. His system access was disabled before he left the room. Madison was removed from the vice president role pending an independent review, though she remained employed in a non-supervisory position. She did not argue. I was asked to wait in another conference room. An hour later, Evelyn and the CEO joined me. The CEO looked older than he had 2 days earlier. "Rachel," he said, "the company mishandled your termination." "That is one way to say it." He nodded. "We are rescinding it." I said nothing. "We would like you to return as interim vice president of operations." I looked at Evelyn. "Interim?" "The board will conduct a formal search," she said. "You would be a candidate, a real one." The CEO added, "Your compensation would be adjusted immediately. We would also provide a written correction to your personnel record and reimburse your legal expenses." I had imagined that moment for years. Not this exact version, of course. In my imagination, I earned the promotion through performance, accepted it in a room full of applause, and called my mother afterward. Instead, I sat across from 2 executives who had failed to notice what was happening in their own company. I asked, "What happens to the people who approve Gordon's contracts?" Evelyn said, "That review is ongoing." "What happens to the employees who raised concerns and were ignored?" "We will identify them." "What happens to Madison?" The CEO hesitated. "That depends on the review." I looked out the window. 12 floors below, people were entering the building, carrying coffee, checking phones, beginning ordinary workdays. Most of them would never know how close the company had come to continuing exactly as before. "I'll return under conditions," I said. The CEO straightened. "What conditions?" "First, operations procurement gets independent compliance oversight. Second, performance credit must identify actual project ownership. Third, no executive can appoint or promote a relative into their reporting chain without full board review. Fourth, my termination record is corrected before I walk back into the building." Evelyn nodded. "Agreed." "I'm not finished." The CEO almost smiled. "Go on." "I choose my leadership team. I will not be expected to protect people from the consequences of decisions they made. And if the board wants me to fix the culture, the board will have to tolerate honest reports." Evelyn said, "That may be why you're the right person." I returned the following Monday. No announcement called it a triumph. The company released a short statement saying Gordon Hale had resigned following an internal review and that I had been appointed interim vice president of operations. People filled in the rest. Some congratulated me. Some apologized for staying quiet. Some avoided my eyes. Madison came to my office on my second day back. She looked different without the executive title. Not smaller, just less rehearsed. "I wanted to tell you I'm sorry," she said. "For which part?" "All of it." I waited. She continued. "I knew I wasn't ready. I told myself my father saw something in me that other people didn't. I told myself the plan was shared work. I told myself you were angry because you didn't like losing." "That was convenient." "Yes." She swallowed. "I'm resigning." "You don't have to." "I know." "Then why?" "Because I need to find out who I am when my father isn't arranging the room before I walk into it." That answer surprised me. I said, "For what it's worth, you're not responsible for everything he did." "No, but I'm responsible for what I was willing not to question." She left Arclight 2 weeks later. Gordon's resignation became a termination for cause after the investigation concluded. The company pursued recovery of bonus payments and referred several matters to law enforcement. Northline's contracts were cancelled. The board disclosed the related party transactions to its lenders and insurers. The consequences spread farther than I expected. A procurement manager admitted he had suspected the Northline relationship but feared retaliation. A former analyst produced emails showing Gordon had pressured her to alter vendor scores. 2 supervisors said their concerns had disappeared after being sent up the chain. The audit had not uncovered one bad decision. It uncovered a culture trained to survive around one man. Fixing that culture took longer than removing him. I served as interim vice president for 5 months. Then the board completed its search. They interviewed external candidates from larger companies. They interviewed executives with more impressive resumes and polished ideas. This time, I did not write a 48-page plan for Gordon to steal. I presented 12 pages. The first page listed what had gone wrong. The second listed what we had already changed. The remaining 10 explained what accountability would cost, how long it would take, and why the company needed to stop confusing loyalty with silence. The board offered me the permanent role. I accepted. Not because the title repaired what happened. It did not. There are betrayals that do not disappear just because the ending becomes satisfying. I still lost sleep. I still questioned my judgment. I still wondered how many times I had mistaken being useful for being valued. But I learned something important. Revenge is often imagined as destruction. Mine looked like documentation. It looked like timestamps, version histories, vendor records, and calm answers in a boardroom. It looked like refusing a severance agreement designed to erase the truth. It looked like walking back into a building where I had been escorted out and asking for better rules, not a louder apology. Gordon believed power meant controlling who received credit, who got promoted, and who stayed employed. He was wrong. Power was knowing what happened. Power was proving it. And power was refusing to let the person who caused the damage write the final version of the story. 6 months after I became vice president, I received a plain envelope at home. Inside was a handwritten note from Madison. She had taken a job at a non-profit supply organisation in Cincinnati. No executive title, no private office. She wrote that for the first time in her career, no one knew her father. At the bottom, she added one sentence. "You were right to stop rescuing me." I kept the note. Not because we became friends, we did not. I kept it because it reminded me that consequences do not always have to end a person. Sometimes they are the first honest thing that happens to them. As for Gordon, I heard through former colleagues that he blamed me for everything. He said I had been ambitious, disloyal, and vindictive. Maybe he needed to believe that. The truth was simpler. I had been ambitious. I was loyal to the work. And when he stole my promotion, gave it to his daughter, and tried to fire me before the board opened my audit, I finally stopped protecting him from the record he had created. That was all it took. The truth did the rest. There was one more change I made that no one outside Arclight ever heard about. On my first week as permanent vice president, I asked every director to bring me a list of people whose work was routinely presented by someone else. Not complaints, not gossip. Names, projects, dates, and evidence. The lists were longer than I expected. A warehouse coordinator had designed a loading sequence that saved hundreds of labor hours, but her supervisor had received the recognition. A junior analyst had found a billing error worth more than $200,000, but the correction had been announced under a director's name. A maintenance lead had prevented a shutdown, then watched an executive describe the solution as a leadership initiative. We corrected the records. Some people received bonuses. Some received promotions. Some simply received a public thank you with their own names attached. That may sound small compared with a board investigation, but it mattered to me. A company does not become dishonest only when someone steals money. It becomes dishonest every time the truth about who did the work is treated as optional. I could not undo the years Gordon used my effort to strengthen his reputation, but I could make sure the next Rachel Bennett did not have to wait for a scandal before anyone said her name in the room where decisions were made.